and voices of students. So with that, each of those particular individuals has a subcommittee, and you will find that the subcommittees are aligned to the DSFI. So for example, on the organizational chart, you may see our makers team, but our makers team aligns to the professional development section on the DSFI. We have a coaching team, which aligns to coaching and technical assistance. We have an evaluation team, which aligns to Section 8 of evaluation. And then we also have a resource alignment team and a tier 2, tier 3 team. What you will find is that our tier 2, tier 3 team is not directly indicated in the DSFI, but it is a crossover in multiple areas of the DSFI. And each of these pieces shows what the function of that team is, as well as what deliverables they are to produce. And that's critical because when we share this information with our stakeholders, they're able to see what the responsibilities are for each of those teams. So the leads for those teams are responsible for eliciting team members for their subcommittees. And so what you will find is that we use a subcommittee nomination form, and that nomination form actually is sent out to building principals, asking them to nominate someone in their building who would be interested in joining one of our subcommittees. So very simple. It's a Google Doc. That Google Doc then has what's your name, who are you nominating, what subcommittee are you recommending this staff member for, and then it asks for them to provide their rationale for the nomination. And what's critical about their rationale is that they have to include how this individual can contribute to the team and also have a positive impact district-wide. Another part of our leadership teaming is to have monthly meetings. So we do have a year-long schedule developed, and that year-long schedule includes not only the dates for the core team meetings, but also dates for walkthroughs that are jointly completed with our special education partners. And it also includes follow-up meetings with the assistant superintendents who actually supervise the varying areas of the district and the schools associated with them. And those meetings are typically to give them updates on data, the type of support that's being provided, as well as to gain insight into additional support that's needed. So our agenda that is used for those monthly meetings are standardized. What they have, we have roles identified. So the team lead is normally me because I'm the decision maker for this committee, and also have the ability to ensure that the decisions that need to be made, the funding aspect and so forth, are put in place. But we have a team lead, we have a note taker, an action step wrangler who's responsible for pulling all of the action steps together and placing them at the back end of the agenda, a timekeeper. We always have norms. We start with celebrations, and we always begin our meetings with some sort of team building activity. I will say that that has changed slightly in the virtual setting. So I've had to be very creative about how do I check the pulse of my team members in the midst of a pandemic. But the agenda is sectioned out where I have a portion to provide updates from the district. We have ongoing look at data. We talk about action planning, and then we look at school-wide goals and progress monitor those. Our evaluation lead is usually responsible for taking us through a deep dive using the Nancy Love data team process to look at any district data that we have. And then our team members report out to the group any updates that they have or share artifacts or products that they want us to give feedback on. We end with 2 to 3 big ideas from the meeting, and then we identify agenda items for the next meeting. The agenda also includes any upcoming dates that are critical, whether it be assessment dates and things of that nature. So as we as a leadership team meet and we identify those big rocks that need to be taken out, it leads directly into the next section of the point is having vehicles for communicating with multiple stakeholders. So again, that leadership team is making decisions, but that has to be communicated. So monthly, our Board of Education receives an update from me. That includes any data that's been examined, any recommendations that we've made, any barriers that we see to implementation, as well as goals, and then also any next steps that we are looking at. And then we typically give an update on where we are as we progress monitor those goals aligned to our district decorum goal. Executive Cabinet receives a update monthly, and that occurs after the leadership core team has its meeting. And so with that, the cabinet team member receives the same data that we provide or look at during that cabinet meeting. So if we're looking at referral data, if we're looking at attendance data, if we're looking at students placed in alternative setting, we triangulate that. So we do a deep dive during that executive cabinet meeting, looking at that data. And so during that time, we do that. We also provide any reorganization or updates that came out of the leadership team meeting. And then we talk about where we are with our SMART goals and then ask for needs. And then at the bottom, we make recommendations. And so that recommendation to the cabinet allows my superintendent and other cabinet members to provide feedback around what we're doing or make specific acts for specific buildings. And so our finance person is there too, and they're able to say what type of financial support we need to ensure that implementation occurs at high levels. So staff members receive a newsletter monthly. And again, this is part of that communication that goes not only top down, but bottom up. So this newsletter allows our stakeholders to provide feedback and ask for support through what we call our thought exchange. And that's an open conversation tool where we're notified of support that's needed. And that support is also directly aligned to our coaching committee, which is part of the DSFI. So in the monthly update the staff receives, they get an overall message aligned to where we are in any district implementation efforts that we have. And so currently we're working on restorative practices. That would be an item that's included. We include quick hits inside of our updates. And one of the things that we did as a district, going back to one of the questions that the participant asked, how do we create district continuity across buildings? So our district decided to develop district-wide expectations because we recognize that 10% of our students move in and out of the district or across schools when I shared the mobility rate. And so by having district-wide expectations, we know that our students are getting the same thing as they enter the schoolhouse doors. And so that's one of the things that we include in our updates. We include shout outs, and then we also have a piece that includes data that they can look at from the district level regarding how we're progressing with goals. And then we usually include an article, links to websites, whether it be our partners, Missouri school-wide PBIS website or PBIS apps. And so they have a plethora of resources. And then we give them a look ahead to say, here are the upcoming dates that are coming forward. And so as we think about those pieces, you have a team, you're communicating with stakeholders, you have systems developed, you also have to have funds to budget and support the initiative. And so our district has provided a budget line item for our work, and those budgeted funds are used to pay for professional development. It is also paid to reimburse facilitators for their time, which I'll talk a little bit more about. If we're interested in doing book studies, funds are being purchased for that. And so we do have a budget to support the work, and that's critical if you want to have sustainability.
That moves us into poll question 2. So Dr. Jameson just talked to us about leadership team and how that leadership team's organized and some of their standard processes and procedures. So we move to another area here on this graphic. We're going to now move into looking at evaluation capacity. And so with this one, we're talking about that section there on the graphic for evaluation. And ultimately, the goal is that the district is able to do the work of implementation themselves. So we want to be able to build internal capacity to evaluate and keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on. So with poll question 2, we want you to think about, has the district you work with transitioned from external support, so somebody that's attached to the state team or an external consultant or external facilitator, have they transitioned from relying on that external agent to something that is internal, it's local, it's within the district, to conduct evaluations and provide performance feedback around implementation capacity? So an example would be that the district leadership team has developed an assessment schedule. We know what time of the year we're going to take the TFI or the SAS or the BOQ, and when we're going to collect that data and use it, as well as a host of other student outcomes. And we're going to use that to create an assessment schedule to provide performance feedback that can then foster coaching supports in schools. So thinking about internal evaluation capacity and using the poll question number 2 in Pathable, for your district, a 0 would be there is no assessment or feedback about implementation. We're just not collecting data on what's going on and how we're doing it district-wide. Or we are, but it's only coming from an external agent. Somebody is coming in from the outside, kind of tapping us on the shoulder saying, hey, we need to do this, and I'm going to do it for you. A 1 would be that we are collecting some assessment information about how we're implementing PBIS across the district, but it's somewhat dependent on an external agent rather than solely our responsibility as the district team. So we're kind of halfway there. And then a 2 would be, we have internal resources available to facilitate evaluation and performance feedback about implementation. And we do that according to a plan, a schedule, a calendar that we've created in our district. So go ahead and use poll question 2 in Pathable and select either a 0, 1, or 2 response. And then Dr. Guffey will summarize those for us in just a bit.
Kelsey, actually, it looks like a lot of people have responded to that survey, and we are at about a 51% with it being a 1, and that some assessment of implementation is there. 32% are scoring that at a 2, and that 15% are there at a 0.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Guffey, kind of giving us that big picture view of where people are. And that's going to move us back to our exemplar, and she's going to talk with us about what happens in Ferguson-Florissant School District regarding evaluation.
Thank you for that, Kelsey. So what you see in front of you is the district's PBIS assessment calendar. And so what we know to be true within our core team is that we need to continue to have multiple data points so that we can triangulate for decision making. So our evaluation team is responsible for working collaboratively with their committee to develop and identify dates for our assessments. And so how they do that is they look at side by side other district assessments that are taking place to ensure that we don't have assessments bumping up against any of our academic assessments. And then they look at the varying months to indicate what assessments will take place. And so what you don't see on here is the part of the assessment includes a time during the year where we discuss the assessment calendar. And that typically happens in August. This year was a little later for us in September. And we talk about what's on the assessment calendar, what's coming up, and then also the data points that the schools are to examine as they go through. So for example, what we have on our assessment calendar, we have a PBIS classroom strategies walk. And this is included because when you think about accountability from a district level, you want to inspect what you expect. And so if we're expecting to see practices such as our PBIS matrix posted, varying procedures being observed, attention signals, active supervision, positive reinforcement, and things of that nature, you have to monitor that. And so our PBIS classroom strategies walkthrough is actually done by building administrators, and then the teachers receive feedback from their building administrators, and we collect that data. What I can say is that Ferguson-Florissant School District has an amazing evaluation department So all of these tools are actually built in one of the systems. So it's easy for us to pull the data, aggregate the data, disaggregate the data, and make meaning. Our assessment calendar also includes our universal behavior screening. We have our school climate survey, the TFI, which you heard mentioned before, as well as our tiered fidelity inventory. So what we do with this information is use it for decision making, but it's across the district. So all of our schools, when we think about the question about continuity, we have district-wide dates identified, and so schools are not identifying their own assessments dates. So that's how we ensure continuity. In addition, it allows us to ensure that everyone is in the same spot as we think about the level of support that's needed. So going back to the DSFI, the coaching team, and how we launch support to those schools and their teams. But since we're in a virtual world, our data looks a little bit different. In addition to our evaluation calendar, we are currently looking at attendance data to gauge student engagement, and then also our DNF report across the school system. So again, data looks a little bit different this year, but this calendar is what we use district-wide.
Thank you, Dr. Jamieson. This gives us an opportunity to also highlight one of the strategic moves Ferguson-Florissant did was once they had their own assessment calendar and their assessment schedule, the district leadership team had a rhythm of how they worked as well. And you saw a shift from external evaluators knowing what was happening within the district to internal district leaders having ownership to their own data and to knowing where their schools were in the process. So this was a critical leverage point for movement for building internal capacity. So this gives us another opportunity to take a poll and poll 3 Empathables, which is going to focus on professional development. It is critical feature 6.4. So how do we think about ongoing professional development? And one of the criteria is at least annually, PBS is part of orientation with new staff, and refresher sessions are provided with returning or veteran staff. And how and why this becomes critical is Dr. Jamieson talked about that they have movement in and out of students coming in and out of their district. Another district we work with has 40% staff turnover. So we need to, on a regular basis, make sure that the new staff are brought up to speed, and then we adopt and adapt based on what's needed. So this year it was easy for Ferguson-Florissant because they had this system in place to put a refresher about what it was going to like to start school in a virtual environment because they already had that system in place. So what we want you to think about next is what does this look like for you in your district? So thinking about this criteria of 0, no PBS orientation sessions are provided with new or returning staff. 1, PBS orientation sessions are provided with new staff or with returning staff, but are not implemented with both. And 2, on an annual basis, PBS orientation sessions are implemented with new staff and refresher sessions are provided with returning veteran staff. We'll give you a minute to complete that, and then Dr. Guffey will summarize our results.
All right, so currently we've got 40% that are scoring in that 2 on that annual basis. The orientation sessions are implemented with new staff and refresher sessions being provided to veteran or returning staff. Oh, we've just made a major hit. That's now at 38%. Wow, all right, changing again. Well, I thought we were ready to go. We had a trend going. It's changed a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start over again then. We're now at 40% with the number 1, and that PBIS orientation sessions are provided with new staff or returning staff, but not both. 36% are now at that 2, and 25% are scoring at a 0. So they're fairly comparable to each other.
Okay, so we're evenly spread on this one. So Dr. Jamieson is going to spend some time talking about their professional development team, their makers team, and how they use their evaluation data to guide and drive what they provide internally for professional development. And just to pre-correct, she can do a whole hour session on this one alone. So she's going to give you the highlighted version.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. So as stated before, we completed the DSFI, and this year we completed the DSFI as well. And so our professional development team, our makers team, is actually at 81.9% on the DSFI. So it's a strength for us. And so the makers team includes a representation of counselors, teachers, principals, myself, as well as our evaluation person. And this team works in concert with the other subcommittee teams. So this team takes information from the evaluation team, looking at surveys that teachers complete after our professional development to look at what needs are required next. And then we create those learning opportunities and use a train the trainer model to facilitate that professional development for our staff. So what does that look like? So our PD process looks very similar to this. It's linear, and we continue the process throughout. So our maker team, again, looks at the evaluation data, whether it's surveys from previous professional development. We look at district data, which is provided from the evaluation team, and then the content is selected and we develop a deck. And so as we go through, you'll see on the next slide what our standard items are when we do present for that. We then provide facilitators training. Now, this is where district funding is very critical, because the facilitators training typically takes place after school. And then with that budget, you're able to compensate those building facilitators. So again, those building facilitators are a representation from each building, which goes back to the question around continuity. You have those individuals receiving the training, and then they're going back, providing that training to their buildings. And then the facilitators, again, go back and deliver that content, and then we get feedback from the surveys that are completed, and then from the debrief from those individuals who facilitated the professional development. So what you see here is our standard resources. And this is critical because when we think about our PD decks and what we offer, so if you're looking at the document, our PD decks include typically who's facilitating the professional development. In this case, it's the maker team. We always start with the pre-correct, and those are typically our norms. And then we have our agenda for the day, and then any content that's included. We definitely believe in team building and the power of relationships. So all of our decks include an icebreaker, and we include a reminder about our relationship with our multi-tiered systems of support and how academic behavior and social emotional learning work together. During that professional development, there's also an opportunity for schools to dive into their own data. Again, this year it looks a little different. Schools are looking at their attendance data because we're virtual, and also their DNF reports. And then we conclude with a action step. So after every professional development, those team members walk away with having to do something. So if it's completing a screener, if it's going to observe another classroom, complete a data forms, they have to do that. Along with our decks, we have a facilitator's guide, which should be in the chat. And that facilitator's guide is for the facilitators who receive training from the makers team. And that information then is broken down for them, and it includes a script. So it gives them the objective for the session, it gives them an agenda, it links any facilitation rubrics and things of that nature. And then it's broken out by slide. So if slide 1 is a picture of the district, it'll say you're going to do welcome and introduction. So we give them the talking points, and we also give them leadership moves that they should make and what that key point should be when they're delivering the professional development. And then the participants of the professional development receive a participant's guide. And so we try to have our professional development to be very interactive. And so that participant's guide includes the agenda, similar information, and all of the information that the participants will need, and as well as places for them if articles are included or for them to take notes and things of that nature. So we do try to ensure that all of our staff members are equipped so they can actively engage. We also include a Google site for our district. I will, as a pre-correct, I will ensure that that link is accessible for participants of the session. And what that Google site includes is an overview of our district core team, but each of those subcommittees has a link. And so they put their agendas, they link their meeting dates, any projects that they're working on. We include any communique that's gone out to the district, but that information is also accessible by schools. And then we have our cell phone doc.
Okay, and that moves us into poll question 4. So as we move into the final portion of this session, and before we hear from Dr. Jamison again about her district, let's kind of check in and reflect on alignment. Because if we're going to be doing this district-wide, and I love that conversation that question that came in earlier about continuity. In order to achieve continuity, we've got to achieve alignment with related initiatives and programs. So as you think about your district or a district you work with, is there a clear description of initiative alignment? Maybe it's a graphic organizer that shows how PBIS or your multi-tier system of support for behavior is related to the other initiatives and programs within the district. Is there an organizational chart or a concept map? But somehow are you displaying the integration or the collaboration of implementation of PBIS with what else is already going on that has similar goals, outcomes, systems, and or practices? So working towards that alignment is going to foster continuity. So use again in Pathables poll question 4. A 0 would be we have no description or documentation showing alignment of PBIS to anything else. A 1 would be we've got descriptions of individual initiatives. So we kind of say for this initiative, here's what it is. For this initiative, here's what it is. But we're not making that step towards aligning and connecting. And a 2 would be, we do have alignment of existing related initiatives. So anything that's familiar or similar, rather, with goals, outcomes, practices, systems to PBIS. And also it's clearly documented and readily available. So that way somebody could easily find it and see, oh, yep, this is how PBIS connects with this thing that we do over here too. So we're going to give you a chance to respond to that poll. And then just like we've done for the previous ones, Dr. Guffey will summarize it. Then we'll move into our final topic.
I would say that what we are seeing within this poll is something that as an MU Center team, we have lots of conversations about and that a lot of our districts are currently working with and that they're working toward. And that is that 49% of our respondents are reporting at a 1, with 42% being a 0 and about 9% being that 2. So again, what we're seeing here on this poll is also something that we have talked about as far as that's maybe some of those initiative alignment pieces or things that kind of take place once we've got our systems established.
Thanks so much, Dr. Guffey, for summarizing. And I love how you said this is pretty typical. It's pretty typical to see more 0s and 1s than 2s, because a 2 is oftentimes something we haven't thought of before. How does this relate and connect? So we're going to move into our exemplar again, talking about what alignment has looked like within that district particularly.
Thank you, Kelsey. So as you can see, I linked in the DSFI that our district completed this year. And so if we're talking about alignment, you'll find that our goals, our outcomes, and our practices are all aligned. So from action planning, our agenda setting, which is included in our agenda, we go back to our DSFI and any goals that are made, and then how we use our resources and what accountability looks like. And so from the DSFI and from our decorum goal, each of those subcommittees identifies the action step and a goal that they want to accomplish for the year. And then also we develop SMART goals for the year as well. And so those are actually listed there for you to review. And we progress monitor those throughout the year. And so they're aligned to our TFI, they're aligned to attendance, and also our out of school suspension. And so the alignment is critical, and keeping that conversation going as you communicate with stakeholders. And that is the conclusion of my portion. I did leave a Padlet link for those of you who are familiar with Padlet. Feel free to drop any questions or request resources there. Please leave your email address and I'll get that information to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jamieson, for joining us today. And before we kind of start to wrap up, can you tell us just real quickly, how long has your district been working this process of district-wide implementation?
I would definitely say a long time. I'm in my 3rd year in the district, and I actually was handed something to begin to build upon. So I'm thankful for that, because if some districts starting and coming in at the beginning would be a difficult task, but I would say more than 5 years that this has been a process, and we're continuing to iterate as we see changes and as we partner with our MU partners.
I love how you use that word reiterate, because that's what this is. It's a cycle of continuous quality improvement and reiteration and innovation. And your story of Ferguson Florissant and how, 5+ years is pretty typical across all districts that we work with. So as you're starting to explore and possibly adopt district-wide implementation, it's beneficial to think, okay, we've got to commit here. This is going to be something that's not going to happen overnight. We're going to maybe start to see some momentum this first year, but we've got to lean in and really commit. So we want to leave you today with some valuable resources before we jump into the Q&A. So several things that you've got available for you in Pathables, along with all of the resources that Dr. Jamieson shared with you today and are linked up there. You've also got a copy of the DSFI. So what's been up on the Center on PBIS website, pbis.org, for the past little bit has been the pilot version. We've revised that based upon piloting it over the past year, and we've got this new version that's going to be soon up on the website, but we've given you an advanced copy here in Pathables. One of the things that's also available for you in Pathables is our team here at the University of Missouri. We created a companion guide to the DSFI. So this is an awesome document where there are individual chapters that go along with each section of the DSFI. So if you've taken the DSFI and you've identified that training, okay, so training is something where you want your district to grow in, there's a whole chapter on how you might go about doing that, complete with examples, resources, online resources. It is chock-a-block full of things to guide you moving forward, building that continuity and building local capacity after you've taken the DSFI and assessed. We've also published a targeted brief that's there for you on Pathables, all about increasing district capacity to support PBIS. So if you're on that continuum of the implementation stages and phases, and you're exploring and adopting, and you've heard something here today that really resonates with you, there is a takeaway document right there, that targeted brief. It's just about 3 really short, focused pages that you could use to drive the conversation when you get back to your team meeting. Coming soon, our team from the University of Missouri is going to do recorded webinars for each section of the DSFI, so that hopefully we can take our level of fluency with the tool and the individual items and transfer it to you, so that way you can be successful in your local context. Last but not least, we host a Winter Institute every year here at the University of Missouri for the districts that we work with and support. And the Winter Institute that took place this past February was all about the DSFI. So I've given you a link in Pathables to go to our MU Center website. And you can see here on the screen, there are 9 different presentations with exemplars from the districts we work with to see, Okay, I'm interested in alignment. Okay, I'm going to watch 2B. I'm going to look at the presentation. I'm going to look at the handouts and materials and kind of see how that exemplar worked forward with that issue of alignment. So there's lots of resources that we've tried to curate for you and put in Pathables. Last but not least, we're going to move into a Q&A, and I'm going to invite the co-presenters and exemplars. We're going to turn the slides off, turn our cameras on, so that way you feel like, oh my gosh, we're actually in a room together talking with each other. And we're going to rely on Dr. Guffey to kind of push forward some questions that have come through from you today. And hopefully before we close out, we can talk about some of those things and give you additional information. So Dr. Guffey, I know one of the things that you sent through early on was related to the difference between the DSFI and the DCA. So some of you may be familiar with the DCA, or the District Capacity Assessment. And the question that came through is, well, these two tools sound great. They also seem really familiar and similar to each other. How do they compare and contrast? And so we've been texting in the backgrounds, trying to say, okay, well, this is a great question. How might we respond? And one of the things that we want to share is that the DCA is a great tool. And if you are working on implementing an evidence-based practice district-wide, whether that's an early literacy program or a multi-tier system of support for behavior or PBIS specifically, that's a great tool to kind of take that broad view, that balcony level approach and say, do we have the right things going on in our district to implement an intervention at large? Okay, do we have what it's going to take to do this big lift? The difference with the DSFI is it's continuing that line of thinking and saying, let's look specifically at targeted items for implementation related to PBIS. So if you think back to that graphic organizer with all of those drivers, there are individual items related to each one of those drivers. So you get that targeted viewpoint in terms of, can we do this big lift? Can we do implementation district-wide? Dr. Powers, what would you add to that?
I think you have summarized that really well. Yeah.
Dr.
You've
Guffey,
answered
what
that.
else has come through? What's burning up the lines?
There's a lot. I will say this, you guys have gotten lots of positive feedback regarding the information that was shared. So kudos to all of you. One question I think I'm going to ask one question to you and Dr. Powers, then one to Dr. Jameson. One of them specifically, Dr. Morris and Dr. Powers, is how do you start the process of recruiting individuals for your district core leadership team? I know there was another question in there about alignment. That those alignment pieces can be found on that district practice guide, but I think a big one is, again, starting that process of recruiting individuals for that core, that DLT, if you will.
That's a great question, because I love how Dr. Powers at the beginning of our session highlighted that first. The first step is getting a team. We can't do the big lift if we don't have the people to come together and lift. And so what I would encourage whoever sent that question through, thanks for posting it, because it's something that a lot of people can benefit from. If you look in Pathables at the DSFI that we uploaded there, one of the things that we did when we wrote the DSFI is we said, okay, we need to give people information about administering the DSFI as well as action planning with it. So there's 2 additional parts of information in there in addition to the individual items and questions. At the early pages, when you look at the administration guidance, we tell you these are the types of people that need to be around the table. These are the types of roles. And here's an example of who in a district might wear that hat, so to speak. If you use that in comparison with what you know about your district can get you far. Because if you kind of use that as a checklist and say, okay, in our district, well, it's this person who wears that hat. I'm going to go approach them. And it's these 2 people that wear this hat. So I'm going to start with one, and if they say I'm too busy, I'll go to the other. But you can use that list of types of roles and, again, hats to then go into your district and find the right people. Dr. Powers, thoughts about that?
Absolutely. Internally, you know who can address the functions that you need to address. And sometimes somebody in smaller district can wear 2 to 3 hats. And so you want to think creatively within the context in which you work. And then Dr. Jameson has a unique approach that once the team is up and structured and stabilized, they have a process of applying to be on the district leadership team. And so you actually are recruiting people who want to be a part of this work moving forward.
And we've got about 1 minute left. So I am gonna, I wanna make sure I've got this, a burning question for Dr. Jameson. So I would like to make sure we've got the opportunity for her to answer that. And that is this, Dr. Jameson, in your experience, what is the best selling point or process for getting district level administrators to buy into the idea of district-wide PBIS implementation?
Power in the story. And I say that because sometimes just saying you need to implement PBIS is not going to make your principals or other staff members buy in, but you begin with the story and you use the students to be able to do that. And so when you're looking at data and you're painting a picture for them, and then also celebrating those successes along the way, even the very small ones, and continuing to have that at the forefront. So I think it's being very transparent about the work, eliciting feedback from them on ways to improve. And we do that frequently. And we also share that when we facilitate additional professional development of how we've made those adjustments. But it's communicating frequently, being very transparent, and then also sharing the outcomes with your district staff and using the power of the story, the narrative, to paint the picture of why it's important, because the why matters more so than anything else. So when people know why we're doing it, then they are willing to buy in and get on board.
Well, I do want to say thank you, all of you, for participating in this. The chat, unfortunately, I'm unable to send it the evaluation link through the chat, but in Pathable on that left-hand side of the screen, you will find that it says survey links, and you can click take survey, and we would appreciate you filling out that evaluation regarding this session.
And just as a friendly reminder, session 2, all about variables to consider with strategic PBIS planning, is going to pick up at 45 past the hour. So that's going to be a great presentation by Heather George and Karen Elfner from the University of South Florida, as well as Jason Byers from the Georgia Department of Ed. And so what you'll get from that is a continuation of this theme about district and state leadership. So that, again, will pick up at 45 past the hour. We're so thankful that you had the opportunity to join us today and engage in this conversation. And we wish you all the best as you move back and move forward with your districts.